I'm Brian Riggy with Kiewit. I'm just curious what you think are the biggest hurdles that we have right now to get from 3D to 5D.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what we've talked about. It's the supply chain getting on the same page and the risks. So when we talk about a 3D model and we go to emulate it, let's say that the engineer doesn't create the 3D model and provide that to us. We have a strong desire to have one for customer plan presentation, for integrating to our estimating software for all the subsequent things we talked about. We find that young talent's more interested in being modelers than they are quantity takeoff or estimators. However, now do we own that engineered, do we need to stamp that drawing? If we don't have integration with our structural engineer where we can give that model back to them with a process that says, yes, that's indeed accurate, and it needs to happen when the formwork supplier does their activity as well, the risk that people perceive or have, that's the biggest constraint, I believe.
Thank you.
Jason, you're not going to ask a question?
No, we live and breathe this every day.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, similar question on the BIM model. From Lithco's perspective, approximately how many of the projects that you do are you receiving the BIM model from the structural engineer to do with it as you will?
Yeah, less than 10%. Like it is a excruciating small number. And even when we're working closely with them, there's resistance to provide the model as compared to converting it to a CAD file and delivering that to us.
So I have a question, if that's okay. So, Rashid, you mentioned collaboration. One of the questions I get from ready-mix suppliers on a fairly regular basis is about a specification, and you talked about the constructability of it, but I guess the question I have is how do we get the contractors, the ready-mix guys, and the designers, specifiers to communicate so that we can make the mixes, do the job, all those things? Rashid, how would you answer that question? Not to put you on the spot, but...
So could you rephrase your question again?
Yeah. You mentioned collaboration. How do we make that happen between a ready-mix producer, a contractor, and a specifier
I think the first thing is to bring them on board quickly, rather than lately. So that is the whole issue comes is that, see, we as a designer, when we do something, we don't know the resources available to those folks, okay? So we took a best shot, and I can give you a recent example, There was a project, the cost was over, and the contractor was doing some value engineering, and so he wanted to cut down the number of piles on that project. Okay, so he was going back and forth with the structural engineer, so he brought me on, and I looked at the drawing, and I said, well, what resources do you have available? And I saw that what happened, that he has a lot of piles for the lateral pile. So I asked the contractor, what resources do you have if I have to batter the pile? What angle can you provide me so I can take the load on those angles for the lateral load? And he said, hey, I can go 10-12%, without adding cost. And when I did that one, we saved tons of piles on that project. So it's a simple example, but once I know the resource, I can work around with that one, and everybody was happy on that job. So I think it's to bring on board quickly with the collaboration.
John, you have anything to say on that subject?
Yeah, it comes down to communication is what I've always ran into. I mean, realistically, most engineers, if you're willing to communicate with them and really talk about what you're looking for, you can usually get somewhere. Every once in a while, you do run into people that just don't want to change, but the communication part of it is what has helped the most.
Rob?
Yeah, I tend to agree on the engaging up front. An interesting thing's transpiring right now with the reshoring of manufacturing, the data, the microchip, the electrification of vehicles. where these projects, there's money, these projects are wanting to happen quickly, so it's a unique opportunity in time where the contractor, the structural engineer, the general contractor are being pulled together or have the opportunity to be pulled together. So I think some of these emerging segments are presenting those opportunities where we can get there and engage. I think that there will be particular general contractors that'll want prime contractors. I'm going to start a new contracting method called CMMP, Construction Management Multiple Prime, and get the multiple primes that affect the major components there with the CM and the structural engineer, and we don't have to change all our contracting language and all that. It's just bringing multiple primes together that have the knowledge of the different resources to bring to bear. And we're seeing some of that on these emerging projects where speed is of an essence.
Thank you. Yes?
Just as a follow-on to your comment, I see some issues relating to the relationship between designers and contractors. Designers are not forthcoming with their BIM model. Structural engineers are not aware of the capacity of the contractor. The delivery method, project delivery method, design build, so that everybody's one integrated project team. Could that be how we bring back or take the McKinsey report and reverse the trajectory of our industry?
Absolutely. I think the design build approach, and I think naturally some consolidation's happening in the industry. Concrete construction came out. It was only, it was 23 years ago. Lithco was a $40 million business. We're $1.7 billion. There's a lot of consolidation that's happening, and I think having the capacity to engage in that design process with the major primes, I think design build is absolutely part of the answer of how to pull that together.
Yes, sir.
This is probably one of the best sessions I've ever attended. I'm learning quite a lot. And the comment
Thank
I
you.
have is for Larry and Carrie. I think, it may not have got the name right, but if I could draw every bit of their knowledge from their 40 years each of concrete experience, particularly mixed design, because it varies across the country. And so as a structural engineer, I pretty much specify 4,000 PSI concrete, the water cement ratio, et cetera, et cetera. But if we could leverage AI and pull it out of, do the Vulcan mind melt and pull everything that Larry knows out of his mind and put all those mix designs into AI, we could probably come up with better mix designs that I could specify. My question to you all is, are you doing that already?
I would say we're close. You're starting to see it with the data that companies like Verify are starting to have. So we're close. We're not quite there, but I would tell you we're very close. Yes, you're right. We see the same thing specified time and time again. It's funny, in Phoenix, we don't use air. It doesn't freeze. There's no need for it. Yet it pops up in specifications from time to time. So, it's those kind of things that you hope that we would kind of get past and start to know better.
I'm going to answer your question too. Is that legal? I'm not on the panel.
Yeah, it's like-
Good. I was going to anyway. So there's a lot of resources that for structural engineers or other specifiers that could help no matter where you're located with that type of what should you specify in a certain market, material-wise, all those kind of things. There's a lot of knowledge out there, so just got to reach out and ask. Yes, sir.
Yes, so I'm part of the San Antonio, Texas chapter, and I'm very good at getting people together. I've been very successful getting suppliers, testing labs, specifiers in the chapter, but I'm having a really hard time to get contractors in. Do you have any tips to get contractors involved?
It's a really fair question because we have our narrative that we play about architects and engineers, and it's probably time to, and we have Jason Wimberly works for us, and, we've brought folks on staff that are indeed very engaged in this, and then folks pulled me in. But it absolutely is going to take getting together and having these conversations about, job situations early, getting clarity of what we're trying to do from a construction and process perspective, how we're thinking about constructing the building, because even in these big ones, there's different mixes for different pieces. You're tying some of these big components together with wet seams. Well, what are we doing to bar splice? What are we doing to connect those major components? So there's a lot of nuance that will require us to get together. And when we do, this is a Bechtel-driven project, and when we do, it's very powerful. Because we had Jacobson from an engineering perspective, we had Bechtel, Lithco, and others that were very integrated in having those conversations.
Patrick?
So I'm Patrick Frawley, Central Concrete. I'm a mixed design guy, and so I've got, one of the things I see is every job is custom. And when, an owner is spending a lot of money, they want it to be special, right? But I also see that, so they innovate, they want to do new things. But I also see that every design firm has a different specification. And so I've got 10 or more PT mixes, I've got 15 wall mixes, and for me, that creates a lot of risk, right? When I can batch the same thing over and over again, I can de-risk my operation. And so, this is an impossible question to ask, but I'll ask it anyway. How do you foresee us, kind of taking every design, let's say, approach and just trying to simplify it down so that we can all kind of get on the same page?
Yeah. I actually believe with what Rashid said, if people are pulled together, I think it actually less becomes the answer, not more. I think we have more mixed designs because we're disparate. I think in a particular geography, when folks come together, Tommy, we don't like pouring 27 different mixes. We've got our few favorites for placing, for particular finish or duration. So we would be more apt to be narrowing those down than expanding them. So I think what Rashid said, if folks got together early, I think it would actually simplify the mixes per geography, because to John's point, what works in Phoenix is not going to work in, Denver, Colorado.
John?
And you have seen that I showed you that ACI table, there are 4 different categories, and then there are like more than a dozen classes, and if you look at those, they all have different requirements. So we got to satisfy those also, so.
Yeah, I would agree with Patrick. It does need, we all do need to come together, and less is more. It's something that is going to be needed. Productivity, efficiency, all of those things will get better, which is what we're all trying to do.
How many mixes, John, do you have in your computers?
500 that are probably used, probably another 500 that are sitting there ready to be used, and if you don't use a mix, you no longer have data on it. It's like Patrick said, you don't trust it as much, right? So you've got your workhorse mixes that we use all the time, and I know Patrick does the same. You try to push people into that, and then are we really being efficient at the end of the day, right? It's what's good for us is it always good for our customer. So I think there is a better way if we all standardized.
How many mixes do you have, Patrick? More than 1,000?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm Eric Zucker from H&TB. I'm a bridge designer. One comment and one question. For the middle presentation on the data and the dashboarding side, my team has found that Power BI from Microsoft, which is typically free, it's sort of like if PowerPoint and Excel came together in a middle product. We found that has just opened up our ability to visualize and process data, and it's very approachable. My question is, again, going back to the McKinsey study, I've had those thoughts before about the efficiencies of the construction industry, but never seen it laid out quite that bare. so many of the players are private companies, and they have incentive, of course, to be innovative and to be productive. Some of the most innovative ideas I've seen have come from contractors and from fabricators. Why are the market forces, in all of your opinion, not driving the prices down? Is it because so much of the cost is physical products that are sort of bound by physical realities and can't be made more efficient? Is it because very necessary safety steps are increasing over the past decades, and those, while they're important and necessary, do reduce efficiency? I'm just curious your perspective.
Well, certainly from our perspective, the cement producers have figured out how not to be hyperbolic on their price. Lumber went up, came down, steel went up, came down. Cement just kept going up. So somebody figured out how to do that. We haven't figured it out how to do that. So I think that's one element of it. The other one is labor, from a contractor's perspective, which is our second biggest cost, has continued to rise. So, 60% of our cost, 2 items, are not hyperbolic. They didn't go up and come down. They just continue to go up. So one of the challenges as a concrete contractor is that. But I would offer, we construct some very inefficient buildings. I think often over-engineered, and I think it's just a knowledge gap. Often on slabs, somebody's pulling a slab from some other building, some other design, and plugging it in there, and the kips and all the use of that building aren't actually known, and some of the technologies and thinning floors and reducing joints aren't actually known. So we are constructing inefficient buildings. But a lot of our customers are disparate. In other countries, the developer, owner, contractor is very vertically integrated. In the U.S., the developers are many in every segment: hotels, warehouses, multifamily. You go down the line, and it's just many disparate customers. So I think we got to engage early. We got to get on the same page about what's the use of the building, get that information, a single source of truth, is my belief, through the technology of a BIM model. I think that'll drive price down.
Yeah, I would agree. As ready-mix suppliers, we've tried to do a good job to adopt technology to try to lessen costs. I don't know if everybody does that, and I don't know if our suppliers do that. You look at aggregates, their biggest cost there is typically going to be either land or labor, and we know that land has went through the roof, and we also know that labor has increased heavily. So those are typically why those aren't coming down anytime soon. And you're correct, cement, there's less cement production now. We won't see any new cement production probably anytime soon. So we're starting to see a bottleneck there as well, supply and demand.
Yeah, I think you guys have pretty much covered that one, but yeah, the collaboration and the communication, I think that's the key, bring on early, and then, look at each other like a friend, not like a hostile environment, that's the key.
Yes.
Sydney Smith, Heroic Concrete and Concrete Products in Freeport, Bahamas. As you can imagine, we have a pretty small population and on the island, and drivers don't necessarily have years of experience. So can you talk about the integration of technology and how the role that the ready-mix drivers play in that integration, as well as what the training program looks on your end for those drivers, if any at all?
I can't wait to hear the answer to this.
Yeah, so I can tell you, years ago, we would throw a guy in a truck, and he was a ready-mix driver, right? We're anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks now training someone to be a ready-mix driver. Big worry when it came to a system like Verify. The guy was no longer going to know the slump. It's been the opposite. Now he consistently sees the same slump. He sees a 5-inch slump every day. He sees a 7-inch slump. If we do have to, for whatever reason, that system isn't working, it's mechanical. There's times it goes out. He now can get to that slump and be consistent with everybody else without it becoming an issue. There was one point where I tried to back off with the driver being part of the quality control team, and I've actually kind of lessen that now and ask them for even more. The biggest thing I'm working on right now is something I'm learning. We all do a really good job now of producing quality concrete that's got the same slump, but revolutions make such a huge difference. I'm trying to get all of my guys to hit a certain revolution target when they get to the job, the same amount. Again, the more consistent we can get, the better off we are. That's another way we're engaging the drivers to try to be part of this whole thing.
John?
John Myers, Missouri S&T. I want to focus in a little bit on sustainability and affordability cost savings. So John, you talked about how you can actually reduce the amount of cement by being more efficient with these technologies, how you can use GPS, get to the job site more efficiency, save fuel on that side. On the design side, you have design tools that can more efficiently design structural systems. And on the construction side, obviously you can have less waste on the job site. You can look at more prefabrication, less labor usages, and communication, of course, is a big part of this between the disciplines. Can any of you comment in the big picture, how much savings do you feel is out there in terms of optimizing these various aspects through the use of technology?
Yeah, I'll answer. I think if you can use it properly, if it wasn't there, your savings anywhere from 10 to 12% at the end of the day. There are some things that are hard to really quantify, but for us, I can at least quantify that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, design side, the mixed design, those SCMs, we start using more SCMs, like type 1L cement, that will increase the limestone content, and you could reduce some of the cement content on that one. So efficient design, you already mentioned about that one, those kind of the thing which I've called like a low-hanging fruit, you could grab those things and incorporate into design.
Rob, do you have?
Yeah, I think for us, it's product technology, the Ductocrete, the Primex, the thinner joint spacing, wider joint spacing, so you're using less material. Sustainability is a really tough question because we're after CO2 reduction, and then you go to the cement. So you go to the ready-mix truck, we get hydrogen ready-mix trucks. We'll be in better shape if we have than diesel or gas-powered ready-mix trucks, but it's a long putt, I'd say.
Kerry?
You bet. So Rashid, first of all, thank you for using some of my slides. I had no idea where theirs would go when I sent them to you, but I was pleased to see some up on the screen here. And feel free to use them in the future because we want to get the message out to as many people as we can about the need for improved constructability, which then leads to improved productivity of the field. And with that statement, just as a piece of information, for those of you not aware of the fact that ACI rolled out a new entity last year named PRO, and PRO is a Center of Excellence, a separate 501c3 organization, which has as its mission assisting the industry in improving productivity. And we're beginning with the focus on constructability of design. So our objective is, and we have a program rolled out, by the way, I think we're a 12-part training program targeted to structural engineers, and the objective is to train structural engineers in the basics of construction and to encourage them to build a dialogue with the people they work with. Contractors, subcontractors, material suppliers. Because as Terry, you pointed out in your comment and question, I think collaboration is the real key. If we share the wealth, if we share information between designers and builders early in the process, so that designers are engaging with material suppliers, with subcontractors, with general contractors, when they begin their design, and they're doing it in a spirit of trust and cooperation, because they really want to learn, I think we create real magic. And I know that in my experience as a structural engineer, the very best projects are the projects where we are able, through a teaming arrangement, to sit down when the project is being conceptually designed and gain the information we need to make good constructability decisions. So with that as a backdrop, I'd like to ask the panel, in terms of going forward with Pro and the way we roll it out to the industry and the benefits and the services that we offer, how can we best assist contractors, materials people, designers in what we intend to provide out of our Detroit headquarters? Now, we're starting with constructability, because my belief as a structural designer, 35 years, is that too often, I think as Rob, you pointed out, you tend to build some really bad structures. And by the time you get the drawings, it's too late. The design is baked, and you can whittle around the edges a little bit and dot I's and cross T's, but you can't start over again. So if we can improve constructability, if we can get designers thinking constructability from day one, and they understand construction, and they willingly engage with you and all of you guys, I think we move the needle a lot. But what else can we do in the minds of our panel to help the industry?
Yeah, it was mentioned in my intro that I ran YPO Construction Industry Network worldwide for several years. So YPO is a young presidents organization. So CEOs and presidents of companies all around the globe. And specifically in the construction industry, I think there were like 3,500 CEOs of construction industry presidents and CEOs around the globe. And my mind goes to, instead of thinking we're going to put somebody together to teach a structural engineer constructability, thinking about creating forums to bring those resources together to talk about and understand the challenges that each have. So the resources would be indeed, in the case of YPO, it's the presidents themselves, it's high-level executives that are coming together to talk about those constraints. And then what happens is, because those presidents and CEOs have teams, then those team members start to get together. Rashid would say, Rob, do you have somebody that's doing this? I said, yes, I absolutely have somebody. Okay, let's get them together. Let's create a little charter for them to go work and bring back some solutions to us. So in my mind, connecting at the highest levels, because they garner all the resources. So if you connect people at the top, they then can reach the others. If we're down in the troops, we're talking bespoke individual trainings. We'll be here long after my career, would be my opinion.
Anybody else?
I would agree.
Yeah. And Kerry, what I think Pro is at a very, I would say it's a great opportunity for ACI, not only between designer and the contractor, but also the code regulator, the building regulation, bring them on board as well, work with them as well, that what could we do in order to improve the productivity,
Sure.
Glad you brought that up, because the other thing that we did, not so much through Pro, but as a corollary to Pro, is we set up a buildability review committee, and the purpose of the buildability review committee is to take code changes in 318 that are coming out of subcommittee before they go to main committee and get stamped and inked and issued. We take proposed code changes and review them for industry impact. So we review code changes for impact to the industry, and we give that back to the 318 members and say, if you go forward with this change, this is what you will do to our industry. Now, you're welcome to go forward. We're not going to take the power away from 318 because they need to have the ultimate control over their own document. But they will go forward with the knowledge of the impact they're creating. So for example, well, I won't give any examples because there might be people in the room who authored them, but I can think of a few. I can think of a few recent examples where code changes were made that had huge impact to the industry. And I think had the 318 members been aware of the impact that they were creating, negative impact they were creating, they probably would have stepped back and done something different. So we have that committee set up. I believe their first meeting is tomorrow, but it's been sanctioned through TAC, and we have a chair, and we have 15 good people in place. So be aware of that, because in my mind, the building code has grown arguably too quickly, and it's become too cumbersome, and it really is becoming an impediment to the use of concrete. So we have a new mechanism set up to help control that.
One
Maybe-
thing, Kerry, I want to mention, like, one example I can give you, the ACI 31819 code is the special structural shear wall. And there are three things I can mention right now is like, number one is the shear could go to 2 to 3 times more than what we used to do, because there is an equation which go up to 3 times the base shear for the shear wall design. Number two is you have to avoid the critical zone for the lattice splicing. That means your bar has to stick above 20 feet from the foundation, so that's going to be a problem. And number three, you're now requiring the ties in the wall itself, not in the boundary element, but in the wall itself, you require the tie in the structure special wall. So those three things, basically you're telling that don't do the special structural wall in high size make. So if it could get to the point, you know.
So you gave the example, that was one of the.
Maybe we can make a rule that half the members of 318 have to be less than 100 years old, maybe something like that. Did I say that out loud? Sorry. Any other questions? I have one more question. Go ahead.
I run the risk of bringing a technical question, but it's tied to yours, Rashid, because you did start out with a durability discussion that fed into productivity. So it took me by surprise last week. We have a Class C concrete, and so it's the chlorides, the high chlorides. And they took me by surprise last week. They're like, I need more than 0.4 water to cement ratio. That's the only way. Throwing out words, using 1L cement, the new stuff, the green cement, right? And the ready-mix supplier and the contractor were using words like sticky and gooey. And they said it was clogging up this is going to be a pumped thing. Has anybody around here in the room heard about sticky and gooey on the use of 1L cement? Because all they kept asking, I need more water, and sucking up the water.
So yes, the answer is yes. I'm sure everyone up here has heard sticky and gooey when it comes to 1L. Do you guys want to address 1L or no?
Jason Wimberly.
Yeah. Catch Jason separately in a private setting. So I'll just say, all cement sources are different, right? So just keep that in mind. So if someone says sticky, gooey, they're referring to a particular cement source. So it's different, right? So you could say the same thing about, I could name a cement source that's not a 1L, but it's got a really high bling, and it tends to be sticky because it's got a higher water demand. So, and that's really what we're talking about is takes more water to get to the slump they want to get to. So that's a emotional topic. My question is, and if you're a specifier in the room, don't leave yet. So you brought up performance versus prescription specifications, and particularly around the material, concrete. And we started talking about that when I was bringing my kids to ACI, and my grandson was in the back of the room earlier today. So that's how long we've been talking about that. So why is the specifying community so resistant to a simple specification for concrete that spells out what performance you want and leaves the how you get there to the ready-mix producer? Why is there so much resistance?
I mean, from designer perspective is, we want a durable concrete and all those things, and we understand, it can be done, but we have certain specific criteria, especially like parking structures, because durability is an important thing. And I think probably we need more dialogue, sit down together and work it through.
Yeah.
I think it can be done.
It certainly can be done. It typically isn't, but would you care to comment? Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Just one man's perspective. As a practicing structural engineer, I'm very open to that notion. By the way, if I just want 4,000 PSI concrete, and I don't care how you get there, so long as it performs, it doesn't crack, it's serviceable, it's strong enough, it's durable, fine by me. And I can specify the durability, for example, through
Shrinkage,
I can
permeability.
put shrinkage parameters on it.
Right.
I can tell you how much cover I want. I can tell you the F-prom-C that I want at either 30 days or 90 days.
Right.
All of that thing. So that's beautiful, right? What my perception is is we do a lot of work for the federal government. And what they want, they, being the inspectors or whoever the power brokers are in the field, they want to be able to hold on to it and say, if this doesn't have this water cement ratio that you specified, or if it doesn't have this slump that you specified, then it can't possibly be right.
Right. That's
I'll
true.
pause there.
And that's true. That part of it's true. It's something tangible they can point to and said, you didn't meet while the concrete's plastic, but there's, again, ways around that. We can carry that conversation later.